So I do worry that we just gave away some of the gold in the beginning. Have you ever done that? I've had this happen a few times where you record something and you know you've got to re-record it for there was a
Mhm.
problem, and then you're like, it just doesn't feel the same, you know?
Yeah,
It doesn't. You can't. There's that authenticity of saying it for the first time, and you might actually say it in a more polished way the second or third time.
yeah.
Um, but there's something about that first time you say it, because it's just off the dome.
It's like the first time energy, right? It's the most
Yeah.
authentic, it's the most real. Um, yeah, you might say it with more clarity the second time, but that's where I always come in danger of turning into a robot.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the first take is typically the best, even when it's not perfect.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I mean, that's why I'll give you a little inside baseball with the recording. Oftentimes, if I have a singer in the booth,
Mm,
when I'm just recording myself, you just press record no matter what. Because even when
yeah,
when you're practicing, if you like practice a run or you're singing a line, that first time you do it, you have that energy. So it actually might be the best take, even though you were just
yeah,
practicing.
yeah.
So you always just like press record, let the singer be in the booth doing their thing, and then you're like, no, I got it, we're good.
That's like
So
where that's like flow state, right? When we're
yeah.
not thinking too hard about something, when we're just letting it come out and flow out. Um, there's magic in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
There's
mean,
magic
even
in
talk
that.
from that music perspective, once you press record, I mean, it's the same with podcasting, right? Once you press record, I've seen people like, I've been in person recording podcasts with people before, like having guests on, you see them like tense up all of a sudden. And, like we were
Yeah.
just having such a cool, casual conversation, and then boom.
It's perfection can ruin a lot. Right? The
Yeah.
pursuit of perfection can ruin a lot, or the perception of perfection can ruin a lot, where we start picking ourselves apart or the words that we use. And I think the counterbalance of that is consistency and just consistently getting out there and flowing, right? Whether it's the music or the podcast or just your pitch or whatever message you want to deliver to the world. That looks so good. What is that?
On my cold brew,
Cold brew?
mm. Nitro cold brew. I don't drink that irregular shit. It's got to
No,
be
I know.
nitro infused.
Oh, I have, and I do want to talk. I maybe should we talk on pod about it? Maybe after we talk about our next commitment. Um, I know I'm constantly sending you health things, but what you focus on expands. And for me, I know where I am an expert and I know where I am not an expert. And as we all know, there's a lot of conflicting information out there. I'm having my own personal experience with certain things like creatine. And so, of course, now I'm learning more and I'm like, oh, is this better? Is this, who do I know that knows about this potentially? Um, Totally off subject. So maybe we can talk about it today because
Well, I
it is
feel like we
part
might
of,
as well, let's just dive into that now. And I actually know some of the listeners who have asked me about creatine, so
okay.
it's a good subject.
So I'll backstory this, right? So creatine, right? Like perception, like most people was like a bodybuilder thing. I knew guys that took creatine that were competing or just really looking to build a lot of muscle. And then so much research has come out, and yes, thank you, Instagram, where there's been a lot of studies showing that women in perimenopause or menopause, that creatine is like working wonders, not just for lean muscle gain, but really mentally for the mental clarity,
Yeah.
energy. And so I had bought some and was kind of using it without knowing about side effects, and was definitely getting like the GI discomfort, seeing actual weight gain when I'm working hard to be in a calorie deficit. And then I learned,
Oh
okay, well
Lord,
that's
you
I
just said
know. Well,
the two words I hate: calorie deficit.
maybe we're gonna have a longer conversation, but um, you
It's a
know,
myth. Calorie deficit is a myth.
okay, fine. We'll talk about that too. So yeah, I've been working for that, and I am definitely, the scale went down a little bit. Now it's back up. Um, and I'm noticing the GI stuff It's just like right, your muscle is holding more water from the creatine, which is actually a good thing.
Yeah, that's why you
Um,
gain the weight.
right. So it's going to go away, but then I started hearing things, the difference between creatine mono
Monohydrate,
monohydrate versus this, is it HCl?
HCl, yeah, hydrochloride. Yeah.
Which they're saying has less impact. And I had a kidney infection many moons ago with a cyst. So then I'm like hearing that the monohydrate is a heavier load on your kidneys. So that's, I start to go into fear, and I never want to operate from fear. So I'm like, do I throw this creatine out that I have and try to go towards this HCl? HCl?
HCl, yeah.
HCl. And now, of course, somebody's making a gummy with it. So it's like when you're measuring the powder, am I getting, I heard 3 to 5 grams. My powder is 7.5 grams.
Oh,
What am I doing
yeah.
right? What am I doing wrong? Help me.
Well, a lot of this is it depends, right? Like what works for you might not work for someone else, or vice
Mm-hmm.
versa.
Mm-hmm.
I'll send you a link to a good one. That's tested for heavy metals. There's no filler shit in there. Um, the HCl is still kind of new. Like creatine monohydrate has been studied like so much. It's probably the safest supplement you could take. And it's the only supplement I take.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like that. There's just so much marketing shit around it because the truth is, it's really, 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 really cheap to create or to
Mm-hmm.
manufacture, and it's really not sexy. It's just ground up white powder.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of marketing around it. Like the ad you sent me, that guy was kind of towing the line of some bullshit there. Like creatine monohydrate is 100% bioavailable once it gets into your bloodstream. I think
Okay.
he
Not like
said,
this 15% that they
yeah.
say, and that's why
So
you have to
and
load it.
again, the quality of it is very important. Everything else that you're eating, the what's happening in your gut, I would probably think that firstly, I'd want to have you try a lower dose on a better quality, and that's I
Mm-hmm.
don't know which one you're on. But then I would also think about, okay, why is this upsetting the gut? It could be that there's some other gut issues happening, and this is just kind of, adding to it and tipping you over.
Mm.
Um, so it really does depend, and creatine is one of those where you just hear so much marketing nonsense about it, but it really is simple. Just find really high quality, third party lab tested stuff, and it,
Mm-hmm.
it should be fine for you. And the dosage you want about 3 to 5 grams. We piss out about 2 grams every day.
I think I'm taking too much because it's 7.5
Yeah,
grams.
and you're not typically. I mean, there's actually been some studies come out recently that like 10 to 15 grams is really actually you can take the performance to another level. But then it comes to what's your goal? Why are you taking it?
Right. Yeah.
And as a vegan, you definitely want to supplement with it because the only way you can get creatine is from meat, and you're obviously not
Mm-hmm.
eating that. So definitely want to supplement with that. But yeah, I would start with a lower dose and ramp up and
Mm-hmm.
just make sure it's a good quality. Just send me the one that you have. But
I
in
will.
general, for everyone listening, make sure you get something that's third party lab tested, no heavy metals, no filler crap in there. It's already dirt cheap to make, so why
Mm-hmm.
companies feel the need to have to increase their margins even more, I don't know. But
Yeah.
opportunistic, like you shouldn't be paying more than 25, 30, 35 bucks for a month supply.
Yeah, I'm probably around that. Oh look, and I've been consistent with it, so I'm kind of doing it to spite. And it's not to the point where it's like so uncomfortable. It's just I like my digestion is like I'm very regular. Like everything is like clockwork. So I notice
Right.
anything. And of course I'm weighing myself every day as part of my, commitment. So I'm like, damn, I'm like doing all the right things, and like it's not major gains, but my body actually feels better. But I want the scale to start going down, and I know that's not all it. But listen, the truth of it is, for any woman that has excess weight, you're bullshitting if you say you don't care what the scale says. Once you feel like I don't have excess weight, I don't care what the scale says. I feel good. I know I'm good. Whatever. But it's frustrating. So I'm not giving up. But then I'm like,
And the scale
am I
is also
taking the right
misleading
thing?
too.
Yes. Yes.
I went through a period when I was heavily fasting. I measured my weight as soon as I got up after I had a piss, and then right
Mhm.
before I went to bed.
Mhm.
And there was about, from the weight in the evening until the morning, there was always
Yeah.
about 5 to 10 pounds weight fluctuation.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm kind of going
So
within 3 pounds up and down.
yeah,
So thanks, dude.
yeah. So then people have asked me about creatine before. So yeah, just find a good quality, third party lab tested. My favorite is Lineage Provision. I trust the
Mm-hmm.
guy who makes it. All good quality stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, just make sure and you know just make sure you're taking appropriate dosages of it. Start
Yeah.
small and build up.
Yep. I think I'm gonna start having what my scoop is, my 7.5 gram scoop. All right. If we haven't totally enthralled you or totally lost you by now, let's jump into the next commitment. We've been talking about the 10 commitments of an accountable leader, right? In order to have an accountable team, in order to have a high performance, sustainable culture, our thought process is that it's got to center around a inspired accountability, because you can't demand accountability, you can only inspire it.
Right.
So um we've talked about the truth, we've talked about what else have we talked about? A commitment to living your values. We've talked about one more. Yeah, today we're talking about it's a commitment to it's all of us.
The other
Are
one
you
was
looking?
realizing your potential.
Oh,
The first
yes.
one.
And then helping others realize their potential, right? Because
Yeah.
that's as what you do as a leader, and being
Yeah.
committed to your potential.
Yes. Something I'm
So
working on. And it's really
it's all,
interesting that this is the next commitment because I was going to bring up this subject of I'd seen this. It's gone viral. This woman on TikTok who apparently does this a lot. She'll
mm,
rant and rave about her husband on the on TikTok. But the video was basically her saying like, I almost divorced my husband because uh the short version. So the short version of it is just complaining that he wasn't doing things that she asked him to do. Um, and it came across as very victimy,
mm,
very kind of. There's a lot of red flags in there. Like she referred to them as my children, which I fucking hate.
mm, mm-hmm,
Um, and she said, "Oh, now things are good." But the main thing of it was all about her and what her issues were. And the biggest thing that the biggest problem that she had was that she shouldn't have to tell him. He should just
mm,
know.
yeah,
And it's like that to me is just that's not how you solve issues in relationships.
yeah,
It should be looking inward and then okay, how are we going to fix this problem versus
yeah,
it's all your fault, the blame game and everything. And it was really interesting reading all the commentary on it. Of course, most of the men, took my kind of view on it. Some women, kind of stuck up for her, but actually there were quite a lot of women who said the same thing. Like, you know, the. There's also another conversation around the traditional roles of men and women in marriages and relationships.
mm-hmm,
But it was just really interesting just that she took the stance of it was all his fault. There was no recognition of anything that she ever did wrong,
yeah.
which is a huge red
I
flag,
can't,
right?
I
You're
cannot even
never going to
watch
get
that stuff.
anything done if you don't have the ability to look inward.
Look, and we're to communicate. We teach people how to treat us. Who you sent me with Gary V. He's like, you don't like your husband, divorce the fucking loser. Like not saying that he is, but it's like this blame game and this victim mentality. Um, it is. I can't even listen to it. It's
Yeah.
exhausting. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. I also saw a meme, and I will generalize it more, but it was like no parent, during divorce will fight harder for 50-50 custody than like the parent that, could barely watch the kids for 5 minutes while you took a shower. Or like, all of a sudden when you are under a spotlight or you're meant to show up, even though you have not acted that way for the majority of whatever it is, now all of a sudden it's the most important thing to you. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe it is the most important thing to you. And you weren't acting it or like that or treating it that way. But when push comes to shove, do you really mean what you're saying? Like, do you really, how intensely you're going after something? Is it just to prove something, or is it because it's what you really believe? And like that goes back to core values, and that has nothing to do really with what we're talking about.
Well, it does in
um,
some respects because it the commitment is is all of us, right? It's not
yeah.
singular people, and that tends to happen, I think, in relationships and in business. You see
Hmm.
things things have to be done someone's way, or things have to be according to someone's beliefs, whereas
Yeah.
it should be a collective, collective thing. And then when something
Yeah.
goes wrong, it's always someone's fault
Yeah.
instead of it being like, all right, how do we navigate out of this? Forget the
Yeah.
blame; it doesn't matter.
And that's the throw under the bus thing, which I just absolutely detest. When it's a commitment to it's all of us, whether it's your family or your work life, like there is no throwing under the bus. And if you're the leader, it is 100% your fault, right? It is. I remember when I had the real estate team, I had an agent really screw up, like really screw up. And I had to make the call to the client, and I took full responsibility for it and accountability for it and apologized. And, I could have easily thrown the agent under the bus. But what does that look like? This is someone that's on my team. This is someone that I'm responsible for leading and developing. And then I had a conversation with the agent, and they heard me talking to the client, and they were so like, wow, I can't believe you didn't bad talk me. I can't believe you took responsibility for that. Like you took the heat for that. And I made it clear it couldn't happen again. It wasn't that there wasn't a flip side of the conversation, but the loyalty that creates when someone knows like you really have their back, even when you
Oh
screw
yeah,
up, like that's a beautiful thing in business. And to me, in a personal life, in your personal life and in your intimate relationships and your family, that's like there should be no other choice. There should be no other option.
yeah.
Um,
And I think about some of my strongest friendships, and I'm thinking of one guy in particular who I'll be seeing in a few days in England. I consider him
mm,
my best friend. Like if something happens, we'll trip over ourselves to be the one that takes responsibility for it. Like if you knock
yeah,
a drink or something like that. Little silly things, but just knowing when you're in a relationship with anybody, knowing that you don't have to be fearful of having to get a bunch of incoming fire about stuff. It
yeah,
just makes you that much more relaxed. And when you think about it from a professional setting, you're going to be way more productive if you feel like I can fuck up and no one's going to get the knives out and start trying to dig into me. It's just
right.
we'll work through it.
Yeah, and there's a difference between someone making a mistake versus someone continually doing something, but that's still your responsibility, whether it's work
Yeah.
or personal. You're choosing to keep that person in your life. You're choosing to keep that person in your world and your environment. So ultimately, you can never pass the blame because everything's a choice. You're making a choice to be exactly where you are. You're making a choice to be around who you are. Not saying that it's easy or that you should be just dismissive of people or run away, but we do have a responsibility that if someone is not just making a mistake and we keep sticking our neck out for them, um, that's on us. At some point, you got to start looking at who 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 deserves these commitments and who doesn't.
Yeah, and I'm reading through some of the talking points I put for this. Thanks, ChatGPT. Um,
Yeah.
and it's one of my pet peeves and something I was always when I had the business or when I was in the business, as the business is still alive. Um, I made such an effort to never talk about mine or I. It was always
Mm,
our team, our
mm,
trainers, our this, our members, our clients, that kind of thing. Because nothing is going to breed resentment more or foster this like a toxic culture of it's kind of like you want ownership because you want people to own what they do, but there's like a fake
mm,
ownership of who's entitled to what, and
yeah.
it starts from the leader, like and uh, yeah, it's really really unattractive to me when you
Mm,
have business owners or business leaders who it's all about I and my and my staff. I hate if someone says my staff, but I
mm.
automatically am like I don't like you. Should be you can say my team. That's a little
Yeah.
different, but staff is just seems subservient.
Yeah. Words matter,
Yeah.
right? Words matter. And at the same time, I'll work with leaders, specifically owners, that want their team, aka staff, aka employees, to work and act like them.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, but are they owners? Did you give them a percentage of the business? No. Well, then you can't expect them to act like that. Right? You can have expectations, you can have core values that everybody operates in, but if no one is going to act like an owner unless they are an owner.
Yeah.
They can act like a really committed person, they can act like an amazing leader, they can act like a fantastic employee staff member, but they're never going to act like an owner unless they are an owner.
Yeah. I remember, bringing Gary Vee up again. He said that a long time ago. Someone was saying like, how do I get my staff just don't
Mm.
seem to care? He was like, why would they care? It's your business.
Right.
They're not gonna operate at the same level as you because it's not theirs. Like you can't expect that of other people.
No,
So
and you'll
yes,
just
we
be
want to build
disappointed.
we want to build a collective like it's all of us, but at the same time,
Mhm.
as an owner, as a leader, you've got to appreciate that. And even the same way it might help people with the thought of like choosing a babysitter for their kids or stuff like that. Like no one's going to care about your kids as much as you.
Right.
Same with teachers,
Right.
and that's one gripe I have with. There seems to be this like defer to the teachers about stuff. I'm like, and
Mm.
listen, my wife's a teacher. I've got a lot of respect for them, but it's your fucking kid. Like,
Mhm.
don't let anybody else be the last voice they hear on a subject. It
Yeah.
should be you.
Yeah.
And so we think about this from a family perspective. It should be us. It shouldn't
Mhm.
be letting other people do. It's us.
Yeah. We talked about that when we were talking about core values, and then we started talking about doing it with your family. And I said, if a child is old enough to form a sentence, that they need to be represented in that. That's in the core values and what's important. And you can't exclude, you can't operate, one way for 90% of the people, but then for 10% of the people, you let it slide or you let it go. And that's really all of these commitments, they're 100% of the time. It doesn't mean that you can't flex. It doesn't mean that you're perfect. Um, but we've all been in scenarios where there's been someone on the team or someone in the company that is like the black sheep maybe, but they're top producer, right? They're amazing in sales, whatever it might be, but they are just a crappy person to be around, multiple things. They're not the core values of the company. They keep getting away with murder. And your team sees that. They're like, we're held to these standards and we talk about the core values, but here's a person that's not demonstrating that, and you're allowing them to stay. And so it doesn't matter what you say, it only matters what you do. And when you undermine yourself by allowing someone to stay in your world, whether it's work, business, or personal,
Yeah.
it really doesn't, all the other good stuff you're doing kind of just gets so diluted, like, all right, well, they don't really mean it. That's not what they really mean. So,
Yeah, it's interesting that whole debate, right? Like if you're a business owner or a leader of a team and you got someone who's like the top performer by a
mhm,
long way, but they're arrogant, they're rude to everybody, they don't live the culture like you were saying,
mhm,
you should probably let them go.
yeah,
Even if it's going to cost you short term, but like the long term benefits of having a cohesive team.
yeah,
And like you said, it's the same with friendship circles and stuff, right? Like there's always that one friend who's a dick.
mhm,
You gotta cut them out.
yep. And business wise, once you do that, inevitably, it may take a couple days, might be immediate, might take a couple weeks. You start getting people like, "What took you so long?" Like, "Thank
Yeah,
God you did that." Um, so the commitment to it's all of us, and it ties into so many other commitments. And I don't want to mention too many of them, but it's all of us when times are good, right? We all win together.
yeah,
But more importantly, it's all of us when times are challenging. When we have a failure, it's we all fail and we all win together. And it's never just one of us failing. And then it's our responsibility as the leader to connect with that person and find out like what's going on, like what's happening.
Yeah.
What's the saying? It's like the weakest link, but I think it's actually a Navy SEAL saying. And you don't rise to like the greatness, like you sink to the level of the least performing person on your team. I butchered that and I have to look it up, but that's the team. You could have some elite performers, and if you've got people that just are really struggling and they can't get there, like that's going to be the level that your team functions at.
Yeah. No, it's funny. You see that a lot in sports context, right?
Mm-hmm.
When your team is playing against a much inferior team,
Mm-hmm.
you end up playing down to their level. It's quite interesting, and that happens
Mm.
across the board, right? You're just to that point. It's like you're always going to go to the lowest common denominator in your life. So if you've got someone that's bitter or angry all the time, that's how you're going to start acting too. At some point, it
Mm.
will start dragging you down, and that's why they say you're the you know the I can't think of the first word, but you're the result of the five closest people to you.
You're the sum of the
The
five
sum. There you
people you
go.
spend the
Yeah.
most time around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then that's where we talk about like doing a friend audit, doing a environment audit. Like it sounds heartless in some ways, but you should always be top grading. And if someone's not earning time and space and energy from you, then it's up to you if you want to keep giving it to them
Yeah.
because that's
And
your
that
choice.
that actually really does stunt a lot of people's personal growth. They just
Hmm.
can't shed the the people they used to be with. And hear about that a lot of like people who've really succeeded in some of these these digital nomads.
Mm,
They'll just leave the country they grew up in just to get away,
yeah.
and they can't be in that same environment. And you hear about people with alcohol and drug issues. Like when they're away from that environment, they prosper, but as soon as they're back in it, it's
Yeah.
everything just they get pulled into that world again.
Oh, look at crime and jail and prisoners and like there's almost a preference to be in jail sometimes, like because it's
Yeah,
you're away from you're away from that environment. However, that's also become a norm for you. So it's environment is so huge, yet it can be one of the most scariest things to change, right? Because it means like
yeah,
physically moving, like you just said, like picking up and going somewhere. Um, Removing people from your life, which comes with a whole bunch of guilt and avoidance of having some fierce conversations. And then you and I will talk about this. And I'm always like, but still, give people the opportunity to treat you the way you want them to treat you. But in order to do that, you have to set expectations. You have to let them know what the boundaries are. You have to let them know when it's like not okay if something gets crossed. And if they're truly committed to the relationship, that's something
yeah,
that they'll look and either adjust or say like, well, listen, this is just me and there's no changing it. So either you're going to have to deal with it and then the decision is back on you. Okay, is this something I'm willing to fully accept as part of the ongoing relationship, or is this something that I'm not going to be able to ever thrive in?
yeah, definitely. Um, one thing that I've seen it happen in certain companies that I've worked at, where there's like a lack of um, kind of cross. What's the word I'm looking for? There's no like everything's siloed. You've got
Mm,
one team working on something there, one team working on something over there. There's no real communication or anything, and that leads to bad culture. It leads to a
hmm.
lot of blame, right? Because they'll start all kind of uh, fostering that tribe mentality of like,
Yeah.
oh, it's us,
Gang
and then there's
mentality.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
it's the same, with family. Like I try and, me and Amy try and include the kids in all of the decisions we make. We try and,
Yeah.
even if it's something as small as what should we do for dinner, like
Hmm.
the whole family to chip in because then everybody just feels like they're contributing,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. And when you author it or you help to author it, then you own it. And that's a way of
Yeah.
creating ownership without actually someone being an owner, making them part. We do, we do this culture core values exercise corporately, and without fail, the executive and leadership team or owners is always like, okay, we'll get like 5 or 7 people together. Like, we'll get our executive team together and we'll work on this. And we're like, no, we want as many people as possible in the room to be working on this for multiple reasons. And it is because it's all of us. So if leaders get fearful of too much input, right? They
Hmm.
get afraid, okay, that's too many people. Now, like Sam and I are great at facilitating and we know how to move people through that. But if you're not great at facilitating and you're going, oh my gosh, core values, we're going to have 50, 60, 100 people's input on this, we'll never get it completed. And what the truth is that it's way more powerful. Everybody in that room is already up to speed, so it cuts down the
Hmm.
time on actually disseminating what the values are, and everyone has been part of creating them. So they are owning it from day one, even before they're completely refined,
Yeah.
versus it being something that's just handed down from the executive team. And the truth is, the value of the input that comes from the security in the company, the janitors that are working, taking care of the buildings and taking care of the spaces, the secretaries, the sales force, the leadership, the management, the plan, like all of them. It's so amazing what comes out, far beyond what a team of 5 or 6 executive leaders
Yeah.
would create. Um, but it's scary. People are like, wow, like how are we going to do that? How are we going to take all of those people's information? And it's really coming from fear and lack of control, right? That feels
Yeah.
very out of control. So you do need good facilitation skills to work through a large group like that.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the times you got to think about, am I being insecure in not letting other people give me their opinions?
Hmm.
I have people tell me all the time opinions that I don't agree with, but I'm happy to hear them. And
Hmm.
you to really test your own values and to test your own thoughts and beliefs, you need to hear the other side, because otherwise, do you actually believe in what you're saying? Can you
Yeah.
actually stand up for what you believe in? And oftentimes you'll find people actually can't. They're just, regurgitating what they've seen on the news or what their friends are all saying is a certain thing.
Yeah.
Um, and
Okay.
without people hearing the word Trump and getting all crazy, that's something that the whole no tax on tips. That
Yeah.
wasn't a big policy thing that some, billionaire advisor came to him. He was talking to one of the groundspeople at one of his properties, just
Mm.
asking him, "What are your thoughts on the economy? How can I help someone like you?" And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the idea was born.
Well,
Um, and it's
did that go through?
that's going to be part of this reconciliation bill they're doing.
Okay.
Um,
And today's the big day, right? Is today the tariff day?
Tariff Day, yeah,
Because he didn't want to do it on April Fool's Day.
yeah.
Can
Oh
you
my God, people
imagine?
are going crazy about that stuff too. I don't know when people are going to learn. Don't
Yeah.
don't let the news whip you into a frenzy.
No.
You know?
I One of our clients is a big steel company. Well, they do
Yeah,
carbon electrodes for the steel company. And there's some real impact. And also we've had a lot of companies really kind of go into this like freeze mode, and just not make any major decisions until they kind of see what's playing out, how it's playing out. Um, that's why I like to be
well,
educated on what's happening, but
this is actually a really good topic for It's All of Us,
yeah.
right? Because whether you agree this is the right way to go about it,
Mhm.
what's the reason that this is happening? And by the way, when this comes out in a couple days, things may have changed.
Mhm.
We just don't know. But the whole reason this has come about is because America has been unfairly tariffed by everybody else in the world.
Right.
We're the biggest customers in the world, so
Mhm.
everybody's taking advantage of that. Whether, like I said, whether you agree with how we're going about it or not, we've let it happen for the last 50 years.
Right.
Let's all stand up and do something about it.
Right.
Whether that be going and buying local foods, you're buying, locally sourced food, whether that's buying
Mhm.
American produced whatever you're buying,
Yeah.
like really be purposeful with where you spend your money.
You vote with your dollars.
You vote with
You
your
vote
dollars,
with your
exactly.
dollar.
So again, like whatever side of the fence you're on, whether you think tariffs are the right way to do it, at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, this is something that has been impacting all of us, and it's lowered the value of our dollar.
Yep.
Like let's kind of take responsibility ourselves. Let's be accountable, all of us,
Yeah.
and stop buying all the cheap shit.
Right. Well, because we want the
You know?
cheap, right? That's
Yeah,
like, so you've got, what is it, Timu or whatever. Even my son's like, Mom,
yeah,
I didn't buy from it, but I think my mom got some like beads or something. And my son, who's like, he was maybe 11 at the time, he's like, no, you can't buy from that company. Yeah, we vote with our dollars. And that's where when people go into this overwhelm of like, I can't make a change, how can I impact? That's just a cop out. Like
yeah,
you make a change every single time you click the button or hand over your credit card or hand over your cash. And I think it's also okay to, I hate this all or nothing mentality. Listen, there's
yeah,
a lot of things I don't agree with Trump. There's a lot of basic things that I'm like, oh my God, that makes my stomach turn or like my skin crawl. But there's a lot of things that I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Let me understand this. Like the tariffs, if you don't talk about the fact that we're just equaling what other companies are charging us, what other countries are charging us, we're not asking for more. You have a 25% tariff on our goods, we're giving a 25% tariff on your goods. There's so much more information to get without getting so conflated and people get on fire without truly understanding what it is that's actually happening,
yeah,
which can be confusing. But I think it's okay to agree with certain things and not agree with everything, right?
yeah.
It's
Well, actually, that's and by the way, I'd be surprised if we didn't lose a few people already just from hearing the name. Um, but actually, I was listening to a podcast with Gary Brecker last night, and he was
Mhm,
saying he took a picture with, I think it was with RFK at the
mhm,
Maha Ball,
mhm.
and he said instantly lost 45,000 followers.
Wow.
He
Yeah.
said he gained like another 150 from there, but
Yeah.
still, it's amazing to me. And again, if you don't want to follow people or hear people because you don't agree with them, that's fine. But
Mhm.
you should be able to at least temporarily hear someone else's side of things.
Right.
Um, I forget where I was going. What were we saying?
That this all or nothing mentality,
Oh yeah, so
right?
great story from I think it was a couple of days ago, right? Kid Rock uh, was on Bill Maher's show, who obviously
Mhm,
hates Trump,
mhm,
and he said, you you need to meet him. You need to actually be with him in person because I know they're good friends. He was like, I know he's a good guy. So
mhm.
he went to the White House 2 days ago for dinner,
Kid
and
Rock
they
or
were
Bill Maher?
well, Kid Rock was there too, and I think Dana White
Okay.
also. So there were four of them, and Kid Rock was like they had a great time. They talked about some stuff they disagreed on. They talked about things they did agree on.
Mhm,
And what was really interesting was, and this goes to show like be careful where you spend your money. And Bill Maher's given a lot of money to all the Democrat presidents so far.
mhm,
He'd never been invited to the White House.
mm,
This was the first time he'd been to the White House.
mhm.
Like that's just crazy to me that someone who's that
Yeah.
prominent,
Right.
you know.
Well, he's prominent, which also makes him dangerous, right? Because he has a voice and he's willing to use it.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, even someone like him, he's kind of come around to some pretty common sense thoughts on things, and
yeah,
he's being attacked. It's really interesting, especially when you talk about. I don't like doing politics here, but someone
I
like
know.
RFK, right, who was a prominent Democrat,
Hmm.
all he's fighting for, like all of his other stuff is he's still on that side of things, like where his stance on Israel Palestine, all of these things.
Hmm.
All he's doing is saying, what we're doing right now is poisoning our kids. We need to fix
Hmm.
it,
Hmm.
right? This shouldn't be. But then now all of a sudden, because he's aligned with the Republicans,
Right.
he's getting attacked from the side he was on for the last 60, 70 years of his life. You know, it's just, it goes back to the all or nothing mentality. It's just crazy to me. I'm
Yeah.
friends with Democrats, I'm friends with Republicans. I don't really speak about what I believe in too much because
Hmm.
it doesn't bother me that much. If you think differently, that's your opinion. Like, why can't people just accept this? There's a paradigm of two different sets of beliefs, and there's going to be
Hmm.
90% gray area that we all actually agree on.
Yeah. And that's where I love, it's one of my favorite questions when someone really gets on a soapbox and I've had it done to me, and that's fine. Um, or they really get going, especially if they're complaining. I just love to say, okay, like, well, what are you actually doing for what you
Yeah.
believe in? Right? People love to be in the chaos because it takes the focus off of what is going on in your life, in their life. And then the next thing is, oh, I can't make a difference or whatever. Like, yes, you can. Like, it's such a cop out. So, like, instead of spending all of this energy and spreading, bits of information, what are you actually doing? Like, where are you spending your money? How are you acting? What are you supporting? What are you not supporting? What are you teaching your children? What message are you spreading? We have so much power, and I just see people give it up too quickly. And then, of course, it's easy to go into fear, like me with creatine. Like, oh no, am I going to give myself another kidney infection? Because like I heard one person mention that it's a heavy load on your kidney, right? And it was a mark, and that was the thing I sent you, right? It was definitely more marketing for you to buy their product, but the
Yeah.
seed was planted, and I was like, oh no, help.
Yeah.
But I at least search out the information. I just don't take that one thing at face value. It's like when someone watches one documentary and all of a sudden they think that they're an expert on something, and I'm like,
Or watch the news. Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah. And,
I we are getting. Go ahead.
no, I was just saying, just before we jump off of the politics thing, like, that is the biggest problem with, it's a worldwide problem, like all the governments. It's never about it's all of us. It's always like, this happened under your watch. It's your fault. You tried to do
Hmm.
this. It's your fault. Instead of being like, all right, how do we come together and actually, and
Right,
we're America, or we're
right.
United Kingdom, we're Saudi.
Aha.
Like, how do we come together and work to fix the problem versus
Yeah,
just trying to throw blame around? And
yeah.
it's
We're
just
trying to clean up your
this
mess.
this systemic issue.
That's the perfect to what I wanted to bring up was when you say it's all of us, right? There's all these kind of micros that turn into the macro. So it's all of us, it's your family. It's all of us, it's your team. It's all of us, it's the marketing department. It's all of us, it's the company as a whole. And if we go back to it's all of us, it's me, it's my family, and then we start to get the big picture where we talk about everyone being connected. If it's all of us, that means it's all of humanity,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to go here with you, but if it's all of humanity and animals and the earth, that's where we get into this big conversation of how are we treating the earth? How are we, why are we separating ourselves from non-human animals? And you and I could talk about this and all of the gray areas and nuances of this for hours and hours and hours, but where does it stop? Like when it's all of us, is it all of us only the people that we like and the people that think like
Yeah.
us, or is it all of the humans in the world? And then okay, if we're talking about human animals, now what are we cutting out with non-human animals? Um it's a very big conversation. It's a very big conversation.
No, it
But
really is. And I think that that's a great point, right? It's like, is us just people that you agree with, people that you like, or is
mhm,
us everybody? Are we going to
mhm,
fix this together and
mhm,
come together and take accountability for where things are?
yeah,
It's
yep,
never just one person's fault. And like, you want to cut bad behavior out, like, put it in a classroom setting.
mhm,
If instead of giving one kid detention for
mhm.
acting up, how about the whole class gets detention? See how many kids act up then. Same with, like, I used to see it in soccer practice. Like, if one person didn't perform, the whole team has to do extra laps or something like that. Like,
Yeah,
you'll cut bad behavior out like that
that's a
because,
very military Navy SEAL, like one person fails, one
yeah.
person doesn't do it,
But
like
again, we're
everybody
all in it
pays for
together.
it.
You
Yep,
don't finish that race.
yep,
One person doesn't finish, you're all doing it again.
yep, yeah. Oh, and that is the true meaning of it's all of us winning together and losing together. And when it's more kind of exterior, like, oh, the company lost money or we didn't hit our goals. Right? It doesn't really impact you as much. But when it requires your money, your time, your energy, your
Hmm.
effort, that's where you're checking in with your fellow people and like, hey, are you having trouble hitting your goals? Hey, what's going on? Let me help you, because it is all of us. And
Yeah.
I think it was Gandhi, and he said, how do you treat others? And he said, there are no others. Like, we are all one. And if we talk about energy and physics and vibration and flow and all of that, like, we love to disconnect ourselves from other living things, but the truth is that it's not possible because we are all intimately connected.
Yeah, one other thing we didn't kind of cover yet is just, and I think this applies in the household, this applies in friendship groups, this applies in business, is, you know, let go of that's not my job or that's not my
Mm,
responsibility.
mhm.
Um, if you can do anything to help in a situation,
Yeah.
just do it,
Ooh.
you know?
Can we give a challenge slash action step from that thought
And
for
I know you
whoever
love
has?
those. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do, because I love, like, whoever has just spent an hour listening to us ramble on with all of our internal thoughts. I'm always like, to me, in order for something to bring value, it has to spark action, because that's the only way that we have any kind of change. So, what would be a great kind of challenge action step connected to it's all of us? And my brain is going to, where in your life, work and family, are you operating with that, like, it's all of us? And where aren't you operating with that? And what would you be committed to doing? And it's something small, just checking in with that one person that's kind of on the outskirt, or that you don't consider part of the team, or checking in with a family member on, you know what, this is how we run our household, but I never really asked you if you understand why we do this, or if this is something that you agree with.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I like that. And I think, one quite simple way is just any interaction you have or any, this is at work or at home, if your spouse does something or if something goes wrong at
Mhm.
work, instead of thinking about, you know, who did that, think about how you could have contributed to that going wrong and then how are you going to help fix it?
Yeah.
Because I really do. I think, yes, it's all of us, but it always starts with that self accountability. Because if you can't involve yourself in
Mhm.
in the us,
Yeah.
you are the you in us. Oh, I like that.
Oh my gosh. Is that a quote, or did that just come out?
That just came.
That is
That just came out.
hashtag trademark Paulo
Yeah,
Bauer, you are the you in us. That might need to be a t-shirt, and like,
yeah.
let's not lose that.
That
That's
I'm
awesome.
sure someone's already come up with that, but first time I ever heard it or said it.
Well, I love it. And I think that's a great, you know, challenge, action step. Keep it simple. Until next time, friends.